The real reason the UK may be headed towards a civil war is a war between ideas. It's probably not the one that you think, so let's examine that today. Okay, so on the surface, a lot of the issues that are happening in the UK now look like they're about migrant hotels and migration generally. Yes, that's true. That's a genuine issue that's been unaddressed for far too long, and normal people have just had enough. So yes, that's definitely the case. I don't want to say that's not the case. It is. It's a major issue. People have voted against it. People have been ignored. People have been told they're racist if they complain about it, and people have just bloody had enough. So that's definitely a core issue. But one, that's the straw that broke the camel's back. Two, there's an underpinning to that which can go a bit deeper. So we're going to look at that, like what's the philosophies involved. Often the philosophies are under the surface and they're not fully articulated. And I think doing that can help us look at the whole thing in a sort of bigger context, understand what's really going on. Okay, so three philosophies we're going to look at. We'll call it Normalism, just making that shit up, Islam, I thought we were going to say that, but it's not actually the main one, and a third one, which I think is sort of more pernicious, which is actually driving it. All right, we could also look at sort of leftism and communism as kind of an aspect of this as well. So, what is a normal philosophy? Most people have an implicit normal philosophy. This doesn't have a name. The reason it doesn't have a name is it's a moral intuition. It's just a sense of how the world is. The conservative impulse is not always well articulated. Roger Scruton talked about this, late great British philosopher. It's often sort of under the surface. There's a sense of home. There's a sense of belonging. This is very normal for people to have a healthy tribal sense. That's been demonized since World War I and World War II. However, it's always there. We like us. We have a sense of our people. If you tell a people they don't exist and if you do, you're bad, eventually they're going to kick back against that. Often unconscious philosophy of just normal conservative belonging. We are a people, we have a place, we have norms, we have values. You can't always quite put your finger on it, right? People say, what is it to be British, like that horrible meme with the guy saying it's German cars and swishes. No, it's little things. It's how you have a cup of tea. It's how you interact. It's being embarrassed to talk to a stranger. There's lots and lots of little things that add up to a cultural coherence and also a set of values underneath that. So normal British people, their values are British. And it's like trying to define it's very difficult because it's elusive. If you say, well, you have to believe in this, it's like, well, they might not. It's not like you have to drink tea or support football, right? But there is what we could call philosophically like a family resemblance of a Venn diagram of many, many things that come together to have a strong sense of coherence. Now, I'm abroad at the moment. I'm in Italy, a country I love, beautiful country. But when I hear the language, I don't quite resonate with me and the little norms and social interactions. It's a bit awkward at times. I don't quite know how to behave at times. That's dysregulating. Okay, so this is necessary for our survival and our sanity to have a sense of us, to have a sense of people in a place that we deeply resonate with. Any tribal people in the world, by the way, would have this, the people of the place. Yeah, often it's just the people as the name for any group in different indigenous languages. Totally normal, natural philosophy. We are a people, we believe in a certain thing. Also, there's a sense of the sacred here. So it's actually what you see going on now is in many ways not just a potential civil war, but it's a potential sort of counter-jihad or jihad, let's say. It's pretty emotive language, but the reason I say that is that the sense of the sacred, again, which is very normal for people. The land is sacred. An Englishman's home is his castle. The garden of England, when you go to the Lake District or the Norfolk Broads, there's a sense of a transcendent beauty shining through that people connected to a place are deeply connected to. So this is a deeply spiritual, implicit philosophy. The nearest we get to this articulate would be something like traditionalism, which is not quite what it sounds. You can look at Ganon and people like that that have tried to articulate the kind of great chain of being and the sense of the people and the place and the spirit being one. This is, Arthurian in a sense. This starts to sound Arthurian, doesn't it? Like the king and the land are one. It's there, it's in us, it's deep. You'll also see this articulated in art and things like Lord of the Rings, for example. Traditionally, the intelligentsia, the intellectual class, weren't like this. They weren't so in tune with this. Why? I think there's an appeal of sort of leftism, socialism to intelligentsia. It sounds very fair. It also piggybacks on some sort of parasites, some Christian traditions of sort of a fundamental equality spiritually, as well as this kind of tribal people. The West has always had both of those things, a sort of horizontal and a vertical, if you will, a quick horizontal, vertical. But intelligentsia often feel less connected to the people, they're less connected to the earthiness, to the actual, even though they might talk about means of production, they've probably never got their hands dirty. They're often international class, like me, girlfriends from a foreign place, go to university with people from different countries, travel a lot. It's very different than the community-based working classes, which you'll see a lot of these protests and this pushback coming back from. Thomas Sowell talks about the appeal of the left to intelligentsia, Scruton, Douglas Murray, others have talked about this. But that philosophy of sort of misunderstanding the egalitarian of Christianity. So Christianity says, under God, we're all the same. Is it St. Paul, St. Peter, St. Paul, I think, saying, whether it's Jew or Gentile, Greek or Judean, under Christianity, we're all the same spiritually. That's why the West ended slavery. That's why human rights come from the West. That was always balanced by just a very commonsensical, it was just a given, I think, in the early days of Christianity. Well, of course you have a nation and a people and, you have a way of life. Of course, that's just totally normal. So when Christianity kind of fell by the wayside and sort of secular times, as Nietzsche pointed to, when God was killed, as it were, or supposedly, that Christian heritage became sort of recycled as socialism and then kind of wokeism. Sometimes you'll see Leninism or biological Leninism you can look up if you want to go more into the kind of philosophy of wokeism that's driving mass migration. A sense of we're all the same, right? We're all the same. It's blank slate. We're not different. So, well, hang on a minute. The personality differences between groups of people. There seem to be IQ differences, a very taboo topic, but the evidence base is there. And clearly, culturally, we're not all the same, right? Just think about, people say they like multiculturalism, but what does that actually mean? What does it mean? I mean, some nice food from different places. Yes, great. I'm sad I can't get a curry where I am in Italy right now. Boo-hoo. Yeah, but other than little things like that, what does it really mean? It means people hate what you love. It means you don't resonate. You don't get your neighbors. You want different things from your neighbors. You have a different way of being. You're dysregulated, your nervous system, on a continuous basis. So multiculturalism often translates under global sort of capitalist scheme we have now as no culturalism, right? Which is very convenient for the sort of capitalist system, which I think, there's a sort of, we could sometimes call it neoliberalism. There's an ethos of people are just units to be moved around. And this was the sort of Thatcherite, Reaganite, kind of 80s right that said, people, it's all about economics. It's not about tribe. It's not about spirituality. People are just fungible economic units to be moved around the world, which is really convenient for keeping wages down. There's a study done, I think it's by Amazon, no, Whole Foods, it's owned by Amazon, saying that multicultural workplaces unionize less. You can look that one up. And that's just common sense. People can't even talk to each other or have shared values, and of course they're not going to unionize. So it's, one philosophy we can see at play here is it's just simply the machine of global capitalism. You don't have to be like hardcore lefty about this, and I encourage you not to be, in fact, but I think we can be suspicious of a worldview that says all that matters is money. Because that way the roots of love, the love we have for family or extended family, i.e. nation, that's all it is, extended family, that those roots of love are uprooted by the sort of deracinated worker. The capitalist system loves the sort of mass movement of people. And again, it's not really a articulated philosophy. It's just something we sort of all accept, right? Somehow it's, what is it? One of the philosophers said, he says, we can easily imagine the end of the world and the end of capitalism. And I think the right is now questioning this and saying, should we all be Thatcherite, Reaganites? Is there a philosophy that's underneath this? Is it just money power running the world, right? It looks like it's a government. It looks like it's a socialist ideology, but maybe they're just useful idiots, okay? Maybe it's just money power. People have different theories about different minority groups within that, of course, but certainly just money. Like money says what really matters is having a cheap workforce. Like, think what would happen to house prices. Look, currently, we're not at replacement levels of reproduction in the West without migration. So what would happen to house prices? They'd go down. So all the people that owned houses and rent them out would make less money. What would happen to wages? They'd go up. This happened after the Black Death, for example. In Europe, wages had to go up because there were just less farm workers around, yeah? So of course the capitalist system has to import mass numbers of people. That conversation is never had. It's, it's put under the conversation of race and racism to stop that conversation happening. The left, unfortunately, is not doing its job. In a balanced system, the left says, hey, workers' rights are important. Let's look at weekends and holidays and, not the average exploited Amazon or Uber worker or whatever, right? So the left has been sidetracked with this woke thing, which, again, could be looked at through the lens of what's called biological Leninism, where it's like the sort of minority rule. The minorities are easiest to weaponize against the majority because they've got the most to gain, basically. You see this in the UK. Minority groups always have something to gain, and they're not serving the interests as a whole. Again, in-group bias, it's a thing. Can you expect someone with allegiance to Palestine to serve the UK equally well as someone who doesn't also have that allegiance, or at least a split allegiance? Okay, last philosophy we have to talk about is Islam. That's what it often looks like is the case. I would say it's more the other factors driving it using Islam, but I think Islam is a strong philosophy of a way of life. It does have a sense of superiority, it does have a sense that we can do things that non-Islamic people, it does have a strong group coherence. You'll hear, I don't know, Robinson talk about like the pylon that happens, you know, if a Pakistani Muslim taxi driver has a problem, then all the other taxi drivers turn up. There's some sense of group cohesion there. There's a strong spiritual practice. I think we do need to look at Islam as a set of ideas and say, is it compatible with the West? So a basic idea of the West is separation of church and state, is secular nature of law and governance in the West. This has been a thing since the Magna Carta. It's a big thing. It doesn't exist in Islam. The treatment of women, this is different in Islam. All right, you can look this up. You don't need to be prejudiced about this. I don't encourage hate towards anyone. Be nice to people. You know, I've got Muslims in my family. There's plenty of nice Muslims out there. But is the philosophy compatible with Western culture? I would say probably not. This may be an uncomfortable truth, and again, this is an excuse to do unpleasant things to anyone. However, I don't think the roots of this conflict we're seeing, I don't think civil war is the best term for what might be coming. It's more like resistance to an invasion, which has been, you know, may look like it's coming from Islamic philosophy, and that is involved. There is a sense of spreading the religion. There is a sense of conquest. The founder of Islam was someone who did conquest, so you know it's in there. But like, what's really driving that? I would say the materialism of the money power. So materialism says we are only stuff. There is no spirituality. The land is not sacred. The people are not sacred because nothing's sacred. The deep philosophy, I think, really driving this conflict is between those that have a traditionalist sense of spirituality. And by the way, Islam's closer to that than this secular kind of materialism, right? Even if it's less compatible in other ways, at least it has a sense of the profound of beauty of the divine. The real roots of this civil war are a conflict between an often unarticulated transcendent traditionalism and a materialism which says all that matters is stuff, therefore it doesn't matter what people are here, the place doesn't matter, beauty doesn't matter, even truth itself doesn't matter. Those sacred principles of goodness, truth and beauty are all out the window. That's the war that's going on. Essentially what we could be seeing is the start of a spiritual war. What I predict will happen, I've said this in other videos, is a radicalization of those on the West when they realize kind of, you know, how evil the nihilistic, hedonistic materialism that they're fighting is. Is that encouraged by certain groups? Possibly. That's not for me to say. Is that hedonistic, nihilistic materialism bad for the human soul? Yes. And people intuit that. That's what's behind the flags. That's what's behind the saying, hey, I'm not against Ahmed or Ahmed. They're mates of mine. I like a curry. But you know what? This doesn't seem right. It does seem like we exist as a people with a place, and goodness, truth and beauty are real things. And now it's starting to get articulated. I love that the younger generation, the Zoomers, are articulating this for the first time, and they're able to provide a sort of intellectual backing and intellectual sort of making clear of this philosophy that it's just there implicitly in working class people. So that is a real conflict that's going on. I hope there isn't a fighting war. I'm certainly not encouraging that. However, I see there is a massive cultural conflict, and these are the philosophies behind it.